everyone, it's Nezzle. Welcome back to my channel Nezzle and to another Nezzle Talk. In today's video, I am going to be sharing with you some pros and cons to living in Grenada. Now, I have gotten several questions from persons asking me what it is like to live in Grenada, what are some of the positives and some of the negatives, and so I thought it would be fun to put this video together for you. However, I didn't want to just give you my opinion because, of course, my opinion might be biased, so I took to my Instagram and asked some of those persons who follow me there to let me know some of their pros and cons of living in Grenada, and I put them together to bring you this video. So I really hope that you enjoy it and find it helpful and informative. If you do, hit the thumbs up button so I'll know. Leave a comment letting me know your thoughts on the video, as well as any other video you would like me to make regarding life in Grenada or any other Nezzle Talk in general. And of course, subscribe to the channel if you are new to my content. If you have not yet subscribed, then I believe this is a wonderful time for you to do so, because I post these Nezzle Talks where I share things about Grenada as well as other things to do with psychology and pretty much anything that persons are interested in having me talk on. And I also put out vlogs. So let's get into the pros and the cons. And I'm going to try and keep it balanced. So for every pro, I will give a con. So I'm starting on a positive. And so one of the top pros, or one of the top reasons I would say that I love living in Grenada, is the people. The people in Grenada are extremely friendly. You are not going to meet many grumpy Grenadians. There are one or two, but for the most part, they are friendly and they are helpful. So if you visit Grenada and you happen to be lost, you don't have to worry. Like, someone is going to stop and give you directions. Maybe they might even say, hey, I'll drive ahead and you follow me. You never know who you'll meet. I have personally had experience, even in some of my videos. There was a video where we were driving and we had some brakes problems, and we met such a kind individual who waited with us until a mechanic came to check our brakes. So definitely friendly people in Grenada, lots of us. Now to the cons. And one of the biggest cons for me, and I think for a lot of persons living in Grenada, is our healthcare system. Now, I'm not saying that our healthcare system is non-existent or that it's totally terrible, but it leaves a lot to be desired. There are many services that are just not accessible in Grenada, and some which are accessible, but you're much better off getting them provided elsewhere. So oftentimes you will see Grenadians traveling overseas to get procedures done, either because they cannot get it done here or they just don't trust to get it done here. I have personally had some very negative experiences with the healthcare system in Grenada. When I was really sick, I had to be flown out of Grenada to receive care when I was a young child. Then I saw what my mom went through, my grandmother, my aunt, too many people. So I am not a fan of the healthcare system. I feel like there needs to be a lot of work done. There is hope, and I do hope that they will get there. But all for now, if you are thinking of visiting, bear that in mind. And especially if you're thinking of moving to Grenada, then keep in mind that if you have any major procedure that you need to get done, that you will most likely have to travel overseas to get it done. Going back to the pros to living in Grenada, and a big one is the beaches. And in Grenada, we have many beaches. In fact, we have over 45 beaches in Grenada. Yep, 45. So when you come to Grenada, you have options. Oftentimes when you see ads on Grenada, you see them promoting Grandance Beach, BBC Beach, maybe Bathway and Livera Beach, but there are so many other beautiful beaches here in Grenada. And so I dare you that when you come, try and explore some of them, especially some of the lesser known ones. Experience just how wonderful they are, because our beaches are extremely beautiful, whether they be white sand, black sand, or even pink sand. They are lovely. So when you come to Grenada, ensure that you go to visit some of our beaches. If you want to try Grandance Beach, and so of course, go visit them, but try some of the lesser known ones as well. You won't regret it. Going back to the cons, another major con for me is the high import duties. If you saw the video where we received the drone, you may have seen that we paid close to $700 just to clear that one item. And there was also another video that I did where I was trying to clear 2 purses and decided that I was just not going to bother with one of them because it just cost too much to clear it. It was literally costing me more than double the price of the second purse to clear it, and that wasn't making any sense. So we have extremely high import duties here in Grenada. Many times you find that you are taxed extremely heavily, especially on items like electronics, clothing, any kind of specialty items. You are charged highly on those. There are exceptions in terms of educational items. So for instance, if you're bringing in a laptop or a tablet, the charge is not too bad there, but generally speaking, you are paying an arm and a leg to bring in items. So you buy the item, let's say you buy a phone, a cell phone, you pay for the cell phone, and when you bring it in, you pay for it again, essentially. So it is extremely crazy. Let's not even talk about vehicles. You buy a vehicle, when you bring it in, you pay for the vehicle plus some. So that is a huge deterrent for people when it comes to bringing in things. I know for me personally, if I don't really need something, I won't bother to order it because it's just not worth it financially. If you do need it though, then you have to go ahead and get it because, well, what choice do you have? Back to the pros. Another major benefit of living in Grenada is the warm climate. I don't do well in cold. I don't even really like being in the AC. I mean, I like it for a short while when I'm like dripping in sweat, but generally speaking, I prefer warm to cold. And so I love that for the most part, it is warm here in Grenada. We do have the rainy season as well as the dry season, and in the rainy season, you have a lot more rain, which means it's a bit colder, but it's not nearly as cold as the temperatures you will hear in places like Canada and England. And so that is definitely something that I love, and I know most of us here in Grenada love, the fact that on almost any day you can get up and go to one of the beautiful beaches that I just mentioned, or you can go for a walk, and the most you really have to worry about is rain. There's no snow, there's no hail. We do have hurricanes during the hurricane season, but aside from that, the weather is usually warm and lovely. Returning to the cons, and closely related to the last con I shared in terms of high import duties, is many times it's simply not possible to get what you want on the island. So when it comes to gadgets, maybe special specifications that you want for your computer, or maybe a specific camera, a drone, any kind of equipment like that, certain outfits, even coming down to simple things like makeup. Certain things you just cannot find them here in Grenada. And so many times, if you want something and you need it, especially things that you might need to get your job done, let's say you work in the film industry, let's say you work in a very technical industry where the equipment is just not available here, then you really have no choice but to get it overseas. And that lack of availability of the items here is a major downside. And even if it is available here, the amount that you will have to pay for it is just not worth it. Usually, even with the duties, it tends to cost less for you to buy it overseas and bring it in and pay the exorbitant charges than for you to simply just go and buy it here if it's available here. It even applies to things like services. So things like Netflix, while we can access Netflix, we don't get access to the majority of shows and so on Netflix. We're paying the same amount as persons who live in the US, but we're getting maybe half of the shows. So I might check for a show here in Grenada and it will pop up as unavailable. Yet my friend in the States will check for the same show and they can look at it. So that is totally unfair because it's the same amount of money that they charge you throughout the world regardless, or at least I think so. At least I know that we pay the same amount in Grenada versus people in the US. Yes, we do not get the same thing. Or in terms of YouTube, we don't have access to YouTube Red or to Spotify or to several things. I even remember trying to get onto Beachbody On Demand, couldn't get that either. Essentially what I'm saying is that there are many things that we want to access here in Grenada, but we just simply can't, either because it's not available on island locally or we can't access it online or whatever the case is, but it is a con. However, coming back to the pros again, I love to be on the pros, let's not complain too much. One of the major pros of living on a small island, living in Grenada, is nature. the access to so many different beautiful aspects of nature. We have so many trees, beautiful waterfalls. I've done so many videos showing you guys the waterfalls that we have. We have lakes like Grenada Lake. We have beautiful rivers, the beaches that I mentioned before. And just being able to go out in nature and not have to inhale too many fumes. We get to really just be one with nature, and I love that about living in Grenada. I love just being able to experience my island in its truest state, which is why I love going on those hikes, especially the ones where they haven't done anything to develop the area or anything, and it's just really in its most natural state. I love that. I love experiencing that natural side of my island. It really just makes me feel connected to Grenada, to God, to myself, and it's an amazing part of living in Grenada. So if you visit, or I should say when you visit, definitely try and experience as much as you can of our beautiful island. Not just the developments. Yes, we have a lot of development happening, but experience as much of the pure Grenada. We market it as pure Grenada, so experience as much of the pure Grenada as you can. All right, another con. Things are expensive. I alluded to it in the last point where I was speaking about it being cheaper sometimes to bring in the item and pay the duties. So yes, things are crazy expensive in Grenada. Almost anything you have to buy costs an arm and a leg. I was speaking to someone from the US recently, and they asked me the price of milk in Grenada. When I told them that we pay $4 for 1 liter of milk, they couldn't believe it. And they were even more baffled when I told them that we pay practically $15 for 1 box of almond milk. In some places you might get it for about $13, $14, but on average it costs about $15. And that is one item. But there are several other items that are just ridiculously expensive here. Clothing. The retailers buy the items in the US for 20 US, and they come back here and they charge us 200 EC. Sometimes more. So it is really expensive. Living costs in general is really expensive. I know when I did my last video, I shared some expenses that persons have, but what I failed to include, which is very important, is the average salary that most people make. And many people make an average of $1,500 per month. There are of course people who make way more than that, but there are also people who make way less than that. And so looking at some of the figures that I gave in that video, you can see that someone who is possibly making $1,000 a month with expenses of $1,200 are already operating at a deficit. So it's very expensive, and many Grenadians struggle because of the cost of living here. So that is definitely something to consider. However, of course, if you're coming in from somewhere where the exchange rate is higher, you're getting a pension or so from there, then you might find the cost pretty low. But for those of us living here, many of us find the things extremely expensive. All right, another pro to living in Grenada is that it is relatively safe and peaceful. Now, I'm not saying it is 100% safe. So don't come here and leave all your stuff free and say Shanezi told you to leave it. I did not. But for the most part, it is safe in Grenada. So there's not a high level of crime. We do have crime, but it is not an extreme amount of crime. And so a lot of people feel really safe and comfortable living here. I generally feel extremely comfortable living here. I will of course take my precautions, but for the most part, I don't worry about walking late at night or about getting mugged or attacked or anything like that, because that is something that rarely ever happens in Grenada. However, a con is that it is very hard to get around at night if you do not have transport, and also there's often very little happening at night. So there's not much of a nightlife here in Grenada. There are things that happen, but they generally appeal to one group of people. So if you don't really like to party or eat out at fancy restaurants, or maybe just buy food on the side of the road, that for the most part is what you're limited to. We have one bowling alley, so there's not that much to do at night. And to make matters worse, if you don't have transport, then you're stuck at home anyway, because buses stop running very early here in Grenada. Most buses stop running by around 8-9 p.m. If you get one running up to around 10 p.m., then you're very lucky, and that's only for certain routes, like the Grenada route. Buses tend to run later there. But there are some routes where buses stop running as early as around after 7, like by 8, they're making their last trip. While taxis are available, they also tend to be very pricey in Grenada. So people don't really take a taxi unless they are tourists or they're really in a jam and they have no other option. Please forgive Cashew. I don't know what has him suddenly so excited, but he is making his voice heard. Another pro, however, is that we have access to fruits and vegetables that are locally grown year-round. There's always something in season, and we know that it is organic and safe to eat. Yes, some of the farmers will use a bit of pesticides and so, but it is nothing major. I remember once I bought some apples and I forgot them in the fridge, and they were there probably for about a month. And when I returned to the apples, they were still looking perfect. And I was like, what? Like, these apples cannot be real. However, we don't have that happening with our fruits. If I pick a mango and I don't eat it within 2 days, that mango is mush. And so we have that comfort of knowing that what we're eating is really healthy and good for us. And on top of that, we don't really have to worry about costs, because sometimes there are so many mangoes in season or whatever fruit it is that you get it freely. You don't have to pay for it. And even if you buy it, it's not very expensive because there's so many in season. Maybe if you're buying it at the beginning of the season when it's just coming in, you may have to pay a bit more, but most times you don't even have to buy it. I don't think I've ever bought a mango in my entire life, because there are so many mangoes around, and even if we don't have mangoes, someone is going to give you some mangoes. Going back to my point about people being friendly, they're also generous. It's very difficult for you to starve in Grenada. You may not be able to eat the things that you want to eat, but there's always something to eat. Someone will give you a hand of fig, someone will give you a breadfruit, they will give you a parcel of mangoes, they will give you some plums. Right now we have sugar apples in season and they are tasting really good. So whatever it is, you cannot, or I should say it is very hard for you to starve in Grenada, because there's always something to eat and it is healthy and organically grown. So that is a major plus for me, because I have been trying to eat healthier, and so I love knowing that when I go outside and I pick a mango or a sugar apple or a plum or whatever it might be, that I am putting some healthy nutrients into my body, and it is 100% free. Yeah. Alright, I got really excited with that last pro, thinking about my fruits, because you guys know I like to eat. But going back to a con, it is very difficult to find employment in Grenada. And that goes for persons across the board. So whether you study and you are well qualified, or you just finished secondary school and you're looking for a small job, it is just very hard to find employment. So you have many people who are either unemployed or underemployed. And I know that this one is not limited to Grenada, but we do have the issue of just having way fewer jobs than people. And so because of that, you always have so many people who are at home looking for jobs. You have very intelligent people who are doing jobs that they are way too qualified to do, and it can be very demotivating. I know several people who are either in that position right now or who have been in that position up to recently, and it's not easy. And I know right now this one, as I just said, applies to a lot more persons in Grenada, and with COVID and so, a lot of persons have lost their jobs throughout the world, and so it's just a really serious issue worldwide right now. But I do believe that we were struggling with this way before COVID. It's just a lot worse now. A lot of people just got laid off because companies are saying they can't afford to pay them. And so that in itself is an issue. But aside from that, people are just really struggling to get jobs here. You find a lot of Grenadians eventually migrating to other parts of the world where they're able to find employment that pays them what they are worth. Because in Grenada, you know your value, but the employers and the government don't seem to know your value. So you study and you spend thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars to get your qualifications, and then you show up to work and they want to pay you $2,000 or $3,000 to do something that you know they should be paying you double or even triple to do. So that's a major con. So many people are not earning what they should be earning, and it is ridiculous. Something needs to be done, but that's another conversation. Another pro of living in Grenada is the close-knit communities. One thing I really love about Grenada is the fact that people know each other and people look out for each other. We genuinely care about each other for the most part. I mean, I'm not saying that every single person cares about every single person on this high level, but we care about each other. When I think about a place to raise children and to have a family, Grenada is where I envision doing that. I cannot imagine raising children in a more busy city or so, and while I know a lot of people do it, I personally don't see that as something that will work for me. I just really love the way that our people are together, the way that other persons are not afraid to tell your child to do something or to not do something. And while children may not necessarily listen, it's at least good to know that someone else is looking out for your child, someone else is looking out for your sibling, someone else is looking out for your grandparent. So even if you have a family member who may live far away from you, you don't have to worry because someone is going to look in on them. They may not invite them over for lunch every Sunday or anything crazy like that, although in some places they do. But for the most part, they will check in. They will be able to keep tabs and say, hey, you know, are you okay? And I personally really love that. So that's a major plus for me. The last con that I want to mention is the fact that it is very expensive to start a business. Now this one I don't have personal experience with, but I figured I would share it just in case any of you looking on is interested in starting your own business. If you have a business idea and you want to get started here in Grenada, just take into consideration that it is not the cheapest thing to do. But if you are someone who has successfully started a business in Grenada, you have a business that is doing well, and you want to share any tips in the comment section, then please do so that we can all benefit. Maybe I might start a business in the future, who knows, but share it so that we can benefit. But just bear in mind that it might not be the cheapest thing to do. So those were 7 pros and 7 cons of living in Grenada, and I just wanted to add in one more pro, just, you know, to leave things on a really high note. We start on a high and we end on a high. So I'm going to give you one more pro. This one is a given. If you've seen any of my videos about Grenada, then you will not debate me on this one. But the last pro is simply that Grenada is beautiful. Grenada is a little paradise. It's a lovely place to live. Yes, there are the cons that I mentioned. It is not perfect, but I can't imagine living anywhere else, not for any length of time. I have lived overseas before, but I found my way back to Grenada because I love my little island. There's a bus passing right now with an annoying horn, but I still love my little island. And so I definitely encourage you that you at least visit and experience it for yourself, because as I said, the people are great, the beaches and the waterfalls and everything are lovely, and it's just something you should experience at least once. So I really hope you enjoyed this video, that you found it helpful and informative, and if you did, please thumbs it up so I'll know. Share it with anyone that you think might benefit from the information here. Maybe you know someone who's thinking of visiting or maybe even moving here. You can share it with them so they get a well-rounded, hopefully, perspective of what it is like. I'm sure I didn't mention all of the pros or cons, but this is just to give you an idea of what to expect. Leave a comment. Maybe you can let me know if I left out anything, any pro that you think persons should know about living here, as well as any con, because we're keeping it balanced. And of course, subscribe if you're new to the channel. If you have not yet joined the Nezzle Fam, then this is an excellent time for you to do so. So subscribe and turn on post notifications so you'll be notified every time I post. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye. Even though I don't know. Alright, another pro. What is that? Beetle. Anyway. However, a con is, what is it? Don't remember. While taxi officers. Yep, yeah, cashew. It's a bee. There's a bee. Where'd it go? It's up there. Ah! Where's it? Ah! Okay. What was saying? I think it did. Alright, let's go.